Born into Brothels, presented by Charlene King, Karen Kreider, and Crystal Winnick. Pimps in the red light district will often encourage women to get pregnant. This is intended to keep them dependent on the pimp and ensure the need to work as a prostitute. It is an unspoken expectation that daughters born of the prostitutes will eventually step in the line. This bleak future does not provide hope for the future. Many children face these glum expectations with little resistance. Throughout the documentary, the children spoke of an awareness of prostitution and the reasons the men frequent the brothel. One child said, "The men aren't good. They are drunk. They yell and swear." This awareness by a small child and an ability to verbalize it was sad to see. Brisky first set out to document the lives of the sex workers. This quickly evolved into a deep look into the lives of the children that live in the brothel. This may have occurred because of the fear and suspiciousness of the camera. The women did not want photographed and were resistant to her efforts. As soon as Brisky entered the brothel, she met the children and thus shifted her focus to their lives. In 1998, Zainab Brisky, a New York-based photographer, went to Calcutta to document the lives of the prostitutes who lived and worked in the red light district. She found herself increasingly entranced by the women's children who, in the midst of poverty and neglect, were demonstrating surprising powers of psychological and physical endurance. Brisky bought 10 point-and-shoot cameras and recruited several of the children to take pictures of the world around them. The idea was to nurture the artistic talents of the children and let them tell their own stories through the photos that they snapped. Born into Brothels is the record of that project. Directed by Brisky and Ross Kaufman, it takes viewers into the hidden world of India's sex workers and their families. Prior to the Academy Awards, the film was accepted at over 30 film festivals and received over 25 awards. Photography there is taboo. The children had total openness with Brisky. Photography allowed her to get deep inside the families. She had to be very careful as the people were suspicious of the cameras. Photographer Zainab Brisky gives the children cameras and teaches them how to take photographs. The movie documents how this changes their lives. Brisky tries to get the children into private boarding schools so they can get out of the brothels and avoid the harsh life of their mothers and other relatives. Bureaucracy and the reluctance of some of the children's mothers, grandmothers, and aunts proved to be her biggest obstacles. The movie shows the squalor of the children's surroundings, but what comes across most is the beauty of the children's souls and the happiness that they display when they take their photos. Even though the American photographer thinks that education is the answer to the children's problems, most of the children don't make it out of the slums. From a socio-cultural perspective, the red light district is one street in India. It is a much different, more dangerous world for those that live there than the rest of India. The community, its government, and its humanitarian agencies have failed the children of this area by allowing prostitution to continue and by not intervening on behalf of the minor citizens born into such poverty and oppression. It is no wonder that Brisky could not overlook this oppression and engaged in an international crusade to help the children. The issues that presented in Born into Brothels were poverty. Most of the sex workers make $2 to $3 a day and sleep with up to 15 men. This is typically enough to cover the cost of a small room and some food. India is the third poorest country in the world. In 2015, 53 million people in India were living in extreme poverty. With poverty comes malnourished children. The children are often underweight and their growth can be stunted. A second problem is sex trafficking. There are an estimated 11,000 sex workers in the red light district. The average age of someone entering sex work is 14. The children are aware of the prostitution and what their mother or family members do. They are also fearful of being sold or having to join the line, and have the same destiny as their mother or family before. Sonagachi is one of the key sex trafficking hubs in South Asia. In 2015, 400 women and children went missing every day. Most were unreported. Children of sex workers are at risk for being trafficked or sold. Some mothers will cut their daughter's hair to make her look like a boy. However, boys are also at risk of entering the trade and becoming pimps. A girl who is a virgin sells at premium rates, and this makes the risk to the children greater. If a young girl is sold, typically they will be locked in a small room with no sunlight and raped continuously until they agree to sleep with men. Child abuse and neglect is a third issue. Often the children in the movie were not seen with their caregivers. There were scenes depicted in the film where the children were being hit, sworn at, and called names. There are 440 million children in India, which is 19% of the children in the world. In a survey completed in 2007 on the children of India, 69% of the children reported physical abuse. 53% of the children reported sexual abuse. 49% reported emotional abuse. From 2001 to 2011, 48,338 child rape cases were recorded in India. Not surprisingly, a lot of the child abuse and neglect in India goes unreported. Mental health. In the movie, Avijit shows signs of grief and depression after his mother is killed. He withdraws into his corner in the brothel. He does not want to come out for the photography group as he has no desire. He no longer is concerned about going to Amsterdam to the photography exhibit. In the film, there is also an overwhelming hopelessness among the children, as being born into this lifestyle and eventually being sold into the line is their destiny. Some of the sex workers try to hide their profession from their children. In one article, a woman's child found out what she does for work and hung himself. There is also a high prevalence of depression, 30%, and anxiety, 42%, among sex workers with HIV. India also has the highest rate of suicide in the world among youth. In 2012, the suicide rate was 35.5 per 100,000 people. The reason for such high numbers is attributed to the lack of economic, social, and emotional resources. HIV and AIDS. HIV is another issue that came up in the movie. All of the children had to be tested for HIV prior to being accepted into any boarding school. Surprisingly, all of the children were negative. The government of India estimates there are 2.4 million Indians living with HIV. Of those 2.4 million, 3.5% are children under the age of 15. 83% of those infected are between the ages of 15 and 49. 39% of all those infected with HIV are women. Substance abuse. In the film, one father could be seen smoking hash. The children were exposed to this and almost felt sorry for the man because the mother abandoned the family. Race-related oppression, trauma, discrimination, value conflicts, and decreased access to opportunities for marginalized groups can result in increased levels of drug and alcohol abuse, and that comes from our textbook. The risk factors for drug abuse by adolescents may be biological predisposition to drug abuse, personality traits that reflect a lack of social bonding, a low socioeconomic status of a family, family bonding, family relationships, and parental guidance and care. A history of being abused or neglected, low emotional or psychiatric problems, stress, inadequate coping skills, social support, association with drug-using peers, rejection by peers due to poor communication skills, poor academic skills, failure in school, a history of antisocial behavior, and delinquency. In India, alcohol and drug abuse is on the rise for adolescents. Domestic violence. In the film, Avijit's mother died because her pimp set her on fire. In India, when a woman is to be married, a dowry is paid, which is a transfer of gifts, money, or parental property from the woman's family to her husband's family. Dowry deaths are deaths of women who are murdered or driven to suicide by continuous harassment and torture by their husbands and in-laws in order to extort an increased dowry. Bride burning is another form of domestic violence in India where a woman is doused in kerosene and set on fire because the family did not pay the additional dowry to her husband or in-laws. By the mid-1990s, dowry deaths have climbed to around 5,800 a year. Although the women in the brothels are prostitutes, many of them also have husbands and children. Discrimination. All of the children experience discrimination and oppression because they come from the red light district and because of the stigma attached to the sex workers. The children could not get into schools because of their parents' criminal records, and Brisky had to work to get past this barrier. All of the children's parents have a criminal record in the movie. Ironically, though, prostitution is not illegal in India. Soliciting a prostitute and owning a brothel is illegal. Lack of education. In a study with 603 male children who live on the streets in India, 299 of the children dropped out of school. 182 were continuing to go to school, and 122 of the children have never even been to school. High dropout rates due to socioeconomic reasons contributes to increased prevalence of substance abuse. Among the 603 children, 298 live with both parents, 137 had no family, 109 lived in single mother homes, and 59 lived in single father homes. Though the majority of the children have both parents, the control and supervision was absent due to poor economic status and a lack of awareness. Most of the children said that they left home because of domestic violence and deprivation of food. Increased alcohol consumption, depleting social values, poor economic status, and insecurity in life may contribute to the ill treatment of the children in the home. The minimum age at starting substance abuse in the study was 11.5 years. Among the 428 out of 603 children on the streets who had tried drugs and alcohol, 207 initiated abuse of a substance between the ages of 12 and 14 years old. 176 initiated abuse of a substance between the ages of 9 and 11 years old. 23 initiated abuse of a substance at an age group between 6 and 8 years old. And 22 initiated abuse of a substance during the ages of 15 and 17 years old. Among the users, smoking tobacco was most common, followed by alcohol use, solvent use, tobacco chewing, cannabis use, and other substance use. Out of the 428 children, no one reported injecting drugs as a source of drug abuse. The children in the red light district were born into the brothels, thus the title for the documentary. The women in the brothels were once children themselves, and the societal structure in India creates an oppressive circle of generational poverty and a vulnerability to a future of prostitution for the children. Of the 8 children, 7 range in age from 10 to 13 and are prepubescent in their development. Suchitra is the oldest child at 15 and a young adolescent in the pubescent stage of development. Internal risk factors for the children include their age, gender for the girls, low socioeconomic status, and a lack of employment opportunities of their parents, lack of education of the parents, criminal and drug addiction behavior of the parents. Protective factors include the emotional support received by their peers, the easy temperament of the children, their resilience and perseverance, and the intervention and advocacy of Brisky and Children with Cameras education. The sex workers have few protective capacities for themselves. They may view prostitution as a protective capacity because it is a way to provide food, money, and shelter for them, but this would not be accurate. A sense of community amongst other brothel members is a protective capacity. Risk factors for the sex workers would include risky sexual behavior, violence and a lack of safety in the brothels, poor living conditions, as well as impoverished conditions. Brisky said that the children repeatedly asked for help. She could not turn a deaf ear to these pleas. She set out to get the proper paperwork so the children could attend school. This also demonstrated the lack of government aid and functionality, as this was nearly impossible to achieve. In addition, finding schools that would accept the children was a challenge, as any child admitted to the school could not have parents with a criminal record. All of the children in the red light district's parents are criminals. It took diplomacy and personalization by Brisky to overcome the societal standard for the right to an education. The children required a birth certificate, a ration card, and medical clearances in order to apply for school. When efforts to engage in the Indian government were not successful, Brisky took the crusade internationally. Through the photographs taken by the children and the interest of other well-known photographers and American connections, Brisky gathered the financial resources to assist the children. All of them eventually left the brothels and were placed in boarding schools. Interviews with the children showed 2 different perspectives. Images and videos of the children depict blank stares and emotionless expressions. Their answers to questions often evoked a desire to go to school, as well as the question of what else there is to do besides stepping in line. Kochi was 10 years old at the time of the filming. She is reported to have dreamy eyes that make you want to hold her hand and protect her. But behind those eyes lies a girl who is strong and resilient, tough and sensitive. She uses the camera to escape her surroundings. Kochi ran away from home with her sister's help to escape her father, who intended to sell her off. One of the most talented of the group is 12-year-old Avijit, who is already an accomplished artist and demonstrated an instinct for capturing photographs. His talents earned him a slot in a prestigious exhibition of children's work in Amsterdam. Avijit is confident. "11-year-old Shanti, while smart and witty, was very troubled that she might never make it out of the red light district. Shanti is the sister of Manik. At 10 years old, Manik shared a small room with his sister Shanti. He loved to fly kites. He was described as a great kid and very sweet. Gore was 13 at the time of the filming. He is sensitive and thoughtful, but dislikes his environment and wants to use the photography to change it. He was described as the most serious of the group. He also has a great sense of humor and loves to smile and laugh. He is best friends with Pooja. 11-year-old Pooja is a tomboy. She is always laughing and smiling. She was the favorite in her family. She and her grandmother talked about getting out of the brothels. However, her family did not like the idea of her being away. Tapasi wanted to be a teacher and dreamed of being able to take care of her younger brother and sister. She photographs the harsh reality of life using the camera to tell her story. At 15, Sukitra was the oldest of the group. She was shy and quiet. She was described as a gifted photographer taking pictures of daily life from her rooftop. The daily lives of the children consisted of washing dishes, getting tea for the adults, running errands, and mopping the floors. Their days can begin as early as 4 a.m. and go as late as 11 p.m. If anyone at any time of the day or night is hungry, the children will prepare rice or curry. They are not paid for the work they do in the brothel. Some children spoke of enjoying sewing. One child, Tapasi, said she wants to be rich and happy, but she accepts that life is sad. This sense of hopelessness was common among all the children. The Indian government officials have failed these children, and Brisky's attempts to rescue them are at the core of the documentary. When asked about her mother's yelling and curse-laden tirades, the child voiced compassion, indicating that her mother is older and will die soon. She knows her mother is just tired. Finally, she said, "I know what my mom does when she goes to work, so she doesn't want to get angry by the swearing." Family context. The children come from single-parent families, mostly single mothers. Some of the children come from two-parent families. India is a patriarchal society. India has a hierarchy system, and men are viewed as higher up than a woman. Many of the children reside with extended family members like grandmothers or aunts. One child was being raised by his father as his mother had abandoned the family. The youth work during the day for other members of the brothel. They also look out for their younger siblings and peers. They are respectful and loyal to their parents, despite prostitution and substance abuse. In a study of 603 male children who live on the streets in India, to include those from brothels, 298 street children live with both parents. 137 street children had no family. 109 street children live in single mother homes, and 59 live in single father homes. Though the majority of children have both parents, the control and supervision was absent due to poor economic status and lack of awareness. Most of the children said that they left home because of domestic violence and deprivation of food. Increased alcohol consumption, depleting social values, poor economic status, and insecurity in life may contribute to the poor treatment of the children in the home. India is a patriarchal society. When a woman marries, she moves in with the husband's family. They reside with his family until his father retires. Once his father retires, the husband then takes care of the entire family. A woman does not have to take care of her parents once she is with her husband. Oftentimes, families in India will have at least 2 sons for this reason. India also has a caste system. If you are born poor, you will always be viewed as poor. Many of the women in the brothels have husbands and children. Some do not, as they were sold into prostitution before they were able to be married off. No matter the circumstance in the film, the children were very loyal to their parents. When Brisky took the children to the boarding school, many cried and clung to their family members. Ecological system theory is based on the ideas that humans interact with a number of different systems. The intersection of the systems influence the area of exploration. Each of these systems affect an individual's life, the community in which they reside, and the relationship between local communities and a global culture. These systems include the microsystem, the mesosystem, the exosystem, and the macrosystem. Applying these systems to the red light district and the children would be beneficial to developing a treatment strategy. We will highlight what these systems are and how it impacted the children in the brothels. 2 microsystems that provided great support to the children include Brisky and the small photography class that was viewed as the most influential system. The photography class provided hope, education, training, and opportunities to explore the environment. They went on outings and created many good memories using the cameras. Brisky brought the opportunity to the children in her own efforts to learn about a culture different than her own. A mesosystem could include the people living within the brothels along with the children. This negative system abused the children, swearing and yelling at them. No efforts were made to provide a quality education for the children. The relationship between the people living in the brothel and the children create the mesosystem through their interrelationship. Additionally, the parents had to be convinced to allow their children to attend school. It was unspoken, but it seemed as though the reluctance may have been based on the expectation that the children would join the line as they got older. A macrosystem includes the Indian culture and societal norms that the parents of the children are not criminals or prostitutes in order for the children to be enrolled in school. The parents of these children met both of these factors, working against Brisky's efforts. Many schools turned her away because of these values. The macro system is not set up to provide basic paperwork and documentation, such as the birth certificate, ration card, and the medical clearance, confirming that the children were free of HIV. The Indian government is an exosystem that had a negative impact on the women and children in the brothels. The government system was a contributing factor in the breakdown of paperwork requirements. Another facet to the system could be the photographers and New York art community that embraced the children and their struggles. While not meeting or engaging with the children directly, their influence, wealth, and power were the most influential in their lives of these children.
The children were deeply affected by the lack of attention or intervention by society at large. Socially, they were not given proper medical care, educational stimulation, or emotional nurturance. This lack of care most likely contributed to a feeling of low self-worth. Politically and culturally, the people of India outside of the red light district did not show care or compassion for the plight of these children, which has allowed for generations of people, women and children, to exist in poverty and oppression. Economically, prostitution is their form of employment that provides for their meager existence. The police, local or national government, do nothing to put a stop to prostitution. This lack of responsibility for their vulnerable within society also contributes to the vulnerability of the children. The children have little insight into what their future could be before the camera program and Brisky entered their world. The hopelessness kept them in a state of acceptance. There was nothing in their lives that empowered them to prioritize their wants or needs. It is no wonder the children had little to look forward to. Consideration of the influences of these systems using the ecological perspective theory will provide a holistic, all-inclusive understanding of the problems under consideration. From a social work practice perspective, accounting for cultural differences, the following evidence-based strategies would be beneficial for the children. 1. A full medical evaluation by a licensed medical provider to obtain a full review of their physical health. 2. The children have been exposed to violence, emotional harm, and sexual activity and exploitation. An evaluation by a licensed psychologist who is an expert in Indian culture will provide information about the effects this may have had on their overall mental health and wellness. 3. Academic testing and evaluation. This intervention will provide a basis for education placement and areas of need. 4. School-home interrelationships should be facilitated by a social worker to bridge the divide and provide counseling to introduce new ideas to the parents at the brothels. Slow introduction of parenting perspectives is needed to support the successful continuing education for the children. Social workers can introduce the long-term benefits through education and support while the children are away. 5. For the sex workers, education on safe sex, condom use, and HIV would be an intervention. In India, 87.4% of HIV is transmitted through sex, and the HIV prevalence is high among sex workers. In Sanagachi, the sex workers cooperative have come together to formulate safe sex practices by mandating the use of a condom. 6. Counseling services for the children and sex workers, if interested, to address their experiences previously detailed in this presentation would prove helpful to their overall mental health. Brisky missed a key element of social and cultural norms when shooting this documentary. India has a casting system, and this was not included. It is normal for kids as young as the children in the movie to work and clean. All of the duties are part of their low class within the caste system. While education is valuable, the children will remain a lower class caste member and cannot move up or down within the caste system. They remain in the class from which they were born. This is a critical oversight because what was viewed as abusive practices, children waking up early, working all day, cleaning and mopping and cooking food, are just the way of life for an Indian person in a low class. From the perspective of an artist, journalist, or photographer, authenticity is necessary to accurately portray the subject. Similarly, in social work, to be able to see the client for who they are from a number of vantage points, considering all of the systems they are a part of, is required. Otherwise, harm can come to the client. It is possible that a Western social worker could cause great harm and hardship to a family if Western views are imposed on an Indian family. Brisky voiced her frustrations at one point, saying, "I'm not a social worker or an educator. I am unsure how to help, but without trying, these children are doomed."